I'm Julia.
And I'm Michelle.
And we're just getting better. This is a podcast for women just like us who are navigating life and just getting better.
Hey, Julia.
Hey, Michelle. How you doing?
I'm feeling a little nervous.
Me too.
But also excited.
Yeah.
Hoping that...
Nervous is good.
Nervous is, yes.
Nervous is good.
I went to bed last night thinking to myself, like, wow, this is very outside of my routine. And isn't that a great thing?
Yeah. I mean, I live in a lot of the gray.
Yes.
And I am at the point right now, like, my life is like, things happen. And that is just, you know what I mean? Like, man planned and God laughs.
Yeah,
That's just how I look at everything now because, I want, and I'm a planner, so I have to sometimes calm down and say, okay, girl, just sit with it and, let things happen. But I'm excited about this. This has been
Me too.
Years, I think, in the making. More than like when we knew it was going to be in the making. I think it was like somewhere.
Yes. Well, it's interesting. I was reflecting back on the fact that we have known each other for 8 years now.
It's been that long?
It has. That's what time does. It just... Yes. We met in, I believe, 2016.
Yes, at the Wine Bloggers Conference.
In Lodi,
California.
Shout out to Lodi.
Hey, Lodi.
Love you guys.
And that was when I just started wine blogging. It was the same year I just started wine blogging.
Okay.
And
wow.
I started wine blogging in March 2016.
And when was it? Was it June?
August.
Okay.
Yeah.
Wow. Yeah. Interesting. And so what brought you into that real quick? Like what's your background? Who are you? Who are you, Julia Coney?
Ooh, Julia Coney. I'm very Southern.
Give me you in 90 seconds.
90 seconds. I was born in a small town in Louisiana, Leesville, Louisiana. I grew up in Houston, Texas, and I currently reside on a plane.
Yes, but, you do. On American Airlines.
I am in the D.C. area, so I'm there with my husband. And so for me, wine is my third career, if we want to talk about that. But all my life, I've been a big reader and curious. So I came to wine from beauty, and I came to beauty from being a legal assistant. So I kind of bring all those...
that makes perfect sense.
All those worlds kind of together. And so for me, it is like, I just woke up in over a few months and was like, how do I want to see myself as I get older? Yeah. And I was 43 and I wanted a career change.
Yeah.
And I went to wine and I didn't want to be writing about beauty in the way that I saw it, felt it, and like, I love it still. I mean, I talk about beauty. I still like go to France and shop and I do all that, but I wanted to have that whole facet of my personality. I needed my personality to come out in a way that was bigger than just legal beauty, even wine. It was like, okay. And then I met you. Who knew?
Ruh-roh.
Yeah, and I remember meeting you. You was like this redhead from Texas, and I was at this wine bloggers conference. I was almost like, who am I and what am I doing here? And you was just like so like adamant, like, hi, how are you doing? My name's Michelle. And I was like, I like her. I knew I liked of your your crew. I was like, she's cool people.
Thank you.
So who are you, Michelle?
I am an enigma. No, not really. You can't define me. I am a wife and a mother, and I also came into wine. I started writing about wine, I want to say, in 2014. It was actually May 2014.
Oh, okay.
I have a different timeline. Wine writing is also my third or fourth career or something along the way. So I have sold software in the past, and then I left the corporate world for a while when I had kids, and then I went back into rebuilding my career, starting in health and fitness and wellness industry, and then I left that after a decade or so. And went to graduate school at SMU. And so as I was finishing up my master's degree, I was deciding whether or not I wanted to continue on and go and get a PhD, which is what I thought I wanted to do, which I still want to do, but won't do.
PhD in what?
Religious studies and history of the church, and specifically in 16th to 18th century Latin America, the landing of Columbus to the expulsion of the Jesuits. It gets very complicated when you start asking me this stuff. Studying the I think it's fair to say, using a modern term that didn't exist at this time, the genocide of the Amerindian people and the power of the crown with the cross and the sword and moving into the transatlantic slave trade and such and such and such.
So basically, you're brilliant. That's basically it. No, you are like
no. I like to go very deep into things that have not many relevancy when it comes to income. Ask my husband. So and so I was in a period of time deciding whether or not I was going to continue on working on getting all my stuff together for my PhD application. Had to do a bunch of stuff for that. And then at the same time, I had a professor. I was taking a class on Pentecostalism and had a professor that was here from California who made us all get on Twitter. And I didn't know what Twitter was at the time.
In 2014?
This was 2013, I want to say.
Okay.
Wasn't on it. Hadn't been on social media before then. Had to get on Facebook and everything for assignment. And I found my way into a wine community. And it was such a great, loving, kind back in the day when Twitter was Twitter and people were nice, that I ended up sharing a lot of stuff and getting engaged in the wine community. Had been drinking wine for 20 plus years, loved wine, had been to Napa and Sonoma and stuff before. And I feel like this is a long story, longer than I expected it to be. I'm sorry about that. But to make a long story long, I ended up getting some samples sent to me, asking me to write about them. Didn't know what that meant. My daughter built me a blog. Didn't know what a blog was. Didn't know anything. My wonderful teenage daughter did that, who's now an adult. And then it just kind of went from there.
That's how blogging starts, right? That's how I started. I started a blog based on telling a beauty editor that I actually get facials in Paris. And she was like, you need a blog. And that's how I started a beauty blog. And the first time someone wanted to send me a product was Bobby Brown. And she was like, we want to send you some products. And I thought it was a joke. And I had him send it to the law firm because I was like, I don't know where you people are. I don't know who you are. Like, you can't have my home address. And I received a box of Bobby Brown products. And it was like Christmas, my birthday. It was like every holiday rolled into one. And I was like, this is a thing.
Well, Bobby Brown, if you want to send me a box of products, I'm more than welcome to.
And that's how I started.
Interesting. That's fantastic. Yeah. So that's how I got into the wine industry. Ended up then moving into leaving the blog behind, moving into writing for a bunch of different wine publications, as you do as well. And I guess in 2016, then that landed us both at the Wine Bloggers Conference. Yeah. And then I know in 2018, we both went to one of our favorite wine regions.
I had never been to Oregon wine region.
I had not either. So we went to Willamette Valley.
Yes.
It is Willamette, damn it, people. I have people ask me all the time, oh, that's how you say that. Yes, it's Willamette Valley. And we attended the International Pinot Noir competition
Celebration.
It's not a competition. It's a celebration. International Pinot Noir celebration. To write about it. I was there to write about it. And were you there also?
I was there as a media guest to write about it as well because they found me and they wanted me to come. And I just remember in my mind, all I heard was like Portland so white. I had never been to the area so much. And I honestly fell in love with the Willamette Valley. I fell in love with the people and the wine. The wine is a bonus, but the people really are amazing. It's one of those areas when you go, you come back with friends.
I love it.
Yeah, it is. And so
such a community.
But we were together all the time.
We knew each other well enough that we ended up connecting and saying, okay, we're going to go early. We were with Yvonne Nil. Yeah. Shout out Yvonne. And we were driving around visiting wineries before the event, and then we attended the event. And,
and that's where we kind of we relaxed into before having to be the media people. But that just was that was fun.
That was so much fun. You had me laughing that entire weekend, as I'm sure everyone who knows you can imagine. And so there's one story in particular that stands out for me. One of my favorite Julia stories from IPNC. So do you want to set it up?
Okay, so I have a thing the way going to restaurants and you would get I call them hashtag hot new Somm, and they are Somms based on books. They've never been to a wine region. They want to dumb you down about wine. And I was being funny talking to everyone around about like hashtag hot new Somm, trying to tell me about Argentina when I've actually been to Argentina. And you all started laughing. And then there was hysterically laughing.
On and on you were.
And there was a winemaker.
We didn't know who it was.
We did not know who
there
he
was. A man sitting across from us that was just sitting there very quietly, not really looking at us, kind of like looking, but listening to everything.
Yes.
And he wasn't laughing. He wasn't. No. He was just taking it all in.
He was chuckling. It was like
it was kind of like he was amused.
He was amused
because we were loud. We were hysterical.
Well, I mean, we had been having Pinot Noir it's like 10 in the morning.
Pinot Noir.
Amazing
It is
Pinot
a
Noir.
celebration.
So. And it turns out that was actually Kim Crawford.
It was actually Kim Crawford. So I go into a seminar that's going to have New Zealand winemakers there and sit down. And then he walks in and sits out at the table. And I'm like, oh shit, it's Kim Crawford.
It's Kim Crawford. But he was
a lovely man.
He was a lovely man. He was there talking about his wine. And it was just a really funny moment. But he understood what we were saying about also not being taken seriously, being a woman, and that's still just everything about that.
Yes.
And I think that was like true bonding because it was because also Oregon, you could get away with saying that in a room full of people and everybody's laughing.
Yes.
To me, I think that's the one place you can get away with that.
They're so great. But, and sidebar, we do love Somms. So we're not throwing Somms under the bus.
No.
Even Somms know who that Somm is.
Yeah, everyone knows who that guy, that person is. Yeah.
And so for all of our great audience, hopefully, the 5 or 6 of you that are with us today, please note this is not a wine podcast. But
this is not a wine podcast.
This is how we came together.
This is how we came
together. So we go from 2018 at the International Pinot Noir Celebration in Willamette Valley, which is a consumer event, and we encourage everyone to go.
Always a fun event.
Which is an amazing place. To 2020.
Yeah.
So,
I mean, 2020 was rough. I mean, like it was already, it was a pandemic that happened. And then for me, it was, the murder of George Floyd and everything that happened. It was, I think, years of just being exhausted being a Black person in wine and trying to promote that. And what do I do? And, everything's happening in 1 week and going on Instagram and doing this live about like the things that have happened to me that I didn't think that many people would watch that video. Honestly, I didn't. I did it because I needed to get off my chest. And if I couldn't get it off my chest, it was going to wither inside of me.
That's why so many people watched it.
And it
was authentic.
It was more than just like, I'd written a blog post about that. It was just like, this cannot keep happening in the world, but also in my industry of like not feeling heard, seen, and all those. And I remember you reached out to me and you didn't reach out to me saying, oh, let me be this white girl trying to like ask you how to teach you how to be an activist. You actually was like, did you eat today? Did you sleep? How are you doing? And you never asked me to do anything. You always just checked on me. And I was blown away by that. And you didn't want to have a conversation. It was more like, did you eat? Did you get a shower? Did you get some sleep? Did you meditate? Did you work out? Go out and get some fresh air. You kept telling me, go outside.
Go for a walk. Go outside.
Go for a walk. And that to me was just moving in a way of, it wasn't what I can do. It was more of how can I take care of you in this moment. And that was a game changer.
Well, that wasn't a moment about anything about me or if I can say any white people. That was a moment for quiet, listening, learning, support. How can I be there for you? I mean, it was trauma. It was trauma for America.
Yeah.
But the trauma was different for obviously.
And then we just kept talking. And it wasn't about anything. It was about books. I think we started talking about books. And the book talk just was, I was like, oh, you read a lot of books. You were telling me which books I should read, things I should read. And I was
me.
And the same, because I was recommending. And then we both talked about our love of Brene Brown.
Well, I've spent, so the second half of the pandemic, the second half of 2020, the gym where I go, they actually opened up. And so I would go at off times, just in a very safe way, just to be able to get a weightlifting workout for women of our age. It's important to do strength training. And I would listen to Brene Brown every time I was there. An hour was my workout. And I would listen to Unlocking Us for about a year. until like middle of 2021.
Yeah.
And that's when I came to you and I'm like, we should do a podcast.
We should do a podcast. And I was
love
like,
listening
really?
to all those great conversations. And
I know, but I remember being like, really?
yeah, you were. You were like, I don't know.
And it was more of like, it wasn't about scheduling or anything.
Mm-hmm.
It was more of, what kind of podcast are we going to do? Because we are both known for wine.
Yes.
And I was adamant, I'm not doing a wine podcast.
Well, and I was probably in that stage. I was a little bit more listening to all of her guests, listening to all those conversations. I was probably a little bit more wanting to do a podcast more about racial justice issues, social justice issues more frequently.
Yes.
But we found out that we have so much in common.
Yes. And I didn't want to do a racial podcast.
No.
I was just like, no, I'm not going to do that. Because also I'm not an authority on that. And I'm way more people more qualified to, I know what I can talk about in my experience, but I feel like people who have really deep study in that of what is going on and legislatively and all that.
Yes.
And then I was talking about turning 50. And it kept going. And I was just like, because you started laughing at me, and I was like, I'm excited I'm gonna be getting 50. I'm gonna get an AARP card.
And I was like,
what? I was like, all the discounts I'm about to have. You have no idea. That's how I was looking, because I was going into my 50s. I was, turning 50 in 2022, and I was just looking at it like at this time of like, why not do a podcast? Because it wasn't like you tried to convince me. You just like, why don't you think about it? And I think it was when I was like, hey, why don't we read this book?
We Are Not Like Them.
We Are Not Like Them.
Yes.
I said, because if I'm going to do a podcast with a white woman, then we need to really have a deep understanding and more than just this, activism and allyship and all those words that were coming out and, accomplice and everything like that. I was like, let's read this book written by a white woman and a black woman who are friends. And that book.
And writers.
And writers. Mm-hmm. And that book was like so good. I really want them to write another book together, because I think they just have such great chemistry to in that book. And so that was really like the ideation of like, how do we want to be? And, also we live in I call it not necessarily new age, but there's so much value in getting older in a way, and also getting an understanding about getting older, and not like, I think about the movie Father of the Bride, right? And in that movie, they're supposed to be 45.
Steve Martin?
Yes.
Oh, I love him in that movie.
I know, but they're supposed to be 45. And if you think about that movie in our life, is so drastically different. Yeah. My 45 doesn't look like that. I don't have children. And so I was like, okay, well, if we're going to do this, like, because I still tell people, I don't think I look 51. I'm 51 now. And I don't feel in like my 50s. I mean, some days when I know I'm older is when I listen to new music. Uh-huh. When I listen to Darius music, I'm like, I grew up in the 90s. So the 80s high school, 90s music, I'm like, I'm like the 99s and the 2000s.
I'm an 80s girl. I can even go 70s. Give me some yacht rock and I'm happy. Give me some 80s music.
Have you heard of the podcast? I mean, that playlist, Yacht Soul?
No.
It's a Yacht Soul, so you should.
Oh, I would love that. I would love that.
And so that's really where we kept coming together. It's kind of like, how are we just getting better? And it was like, we were reading books. We were talking about health. We were talking about supplements. We were reading things.
We were talking about menopause.
Yes. And we were just talking how, like, I was adamant, no one told me this was going to happen. Yeah. No one told me I would feel like this. No one told me about a hot flash where you feel like you're having a personal summer a couple of times a day and there's nothing you could do about it. And so it was doing that research of like, okay, this is going to happen and this happening to women as we all age. Then how do we thrive in all of these changes? Because even like, I don't like the word midlife. I just don't like it. It's kind of like, I don't like anti-aging. We're all aging. Just how are we aging better? So to me, I understand what the term midlife, but I'm like, I'm not midlife. No, I'm not gonna accept that. I know people are listening going like, what? It is midlife.
What to call it. I don't know.
You know what it's called? We just keep living.
we're not just living, we're getting better.
Yes. And that's a daily occurrence, right?
Yes.
And that's a daily of being curious, being open, being understanding, and not always getting it right. I think sometimes, like there's getting it done and then there's perfect. And I think so many women strive to be perfect when sometimes we just need to strive to get it done. And and especially being of a certain generation. That's why I love talking to younger people, because they talk about their mental health. And they, as a person who's been in therapy since I was 16, it was not always being able to tell people that. And not that there was anything wrong. It's sometimes you go to therapy even when it's good, but that our generation wasn't taught that. It was like, hush, hush, don't tell anybody you're going to therapy. Gen X, we didn't talk about that.
Yeah. Yeah, it's interesting too. I know that that's also different in different parts of the country and different cultures and everything, because I don't know. I've been going to therapy for like over 20 years.
Yeah, but when
everybody I know knows I've been going.
But usually
and most of the people I know also, like, it's
but in the Black community, it's like pray.
Yeah,
you can pray and you cry and you pray, and it's supposed to get better. And you sometimes need professional to come in and help you.
Absolutely.
And so that was also a cultural shift. It was a religion shift for me. And so it constantly, I'm always like, okay, well, how do I think about this? Not necessarily the way I always agree with the way I was brought up. It's like my being and my whole life has changed, right? I've moved from the South to the North, which is a totally different way of living, which is totally different education. I love the South in a way that is very intrinsically to my being. I don't like all the ideologies of it either, right?
No.
But also too, I miss being in the South when I'm up north and I walk into a store and no one says good morning. Or, hey, how you doing?
Yeah.
It's little things that you miss when you don't live in that place, right?
Okay.
And so for me, it's, as I continue to age and get better, it's like, how do I leave a legacy? And I think sometimes people think of legacy as only children. I don't have children. So I think about my nieces and nephews, my community that I've cultivated on social. How do I leave a legacy for that? And how do I, embrace all there is to this midlife, this aging, whether it's, putting fillers under my eye and Botox in my forehead and all those good things that, people are like, you don't need. It's not need.
Don't give it all away in the first episode.
No, I'm just saying, but how do we do that, right?
Yes.
Because as women, we're judged in a different way.
Absolutely.
It is always going to be, it's changing, but it's not going to be completely gone or eradicated. But how do I do that? How do I leave this legacy? How do I create community? What does community look like, right? How do, I have so many friends who are literally like family. Like we're texting, we're talking, we travel together. Those things too, that I think we're all in service of community, and that looks different for each person. But like, I know for you, like, like your faith and what you do with your church and how you teach and you're encouraging other people, that's going to be a lasting effect, not only on your kids, but on that community that you also have.
Well, I'm very big on community. I don't believe in the individualism that we've been taught in this country. I think it's a myth, and I think it's a lie, and I think it's a power over power play. We are better when we are in community. And so I think that, I believe that as we move forward with this podcast, like we will reveal layers of that. A lot of the things that you've talked about, books and we're going to have great guests on that will talk about beauty,
yes,
and aging, and also
and style, yeah, fun stuff too.
Absolutely,
a lot of fun stuff.
Yeah. But we also want to be in community with other women, raising up women, highlighting barrier breakers is what we call these, women and men. I mean, all people, but that
and also too, like, not only people our age.
No,
because we're learning from younger people. We're going to learn from somebody older. And that's the thing too. The fluidity of, like, to me, having friends who are younger and friends who are older.
Yes.
Like I always tell my girlfriends, and even like I tell my guy friends, I'm like, you need a younger friend and you definitely need an older friend. Your friends' ages need to vary, because if everybody in your box and in your circle looks and sounds just like you have a problem.
Well, in a lot of ways. Look at The United States, 2024. If everybody looks and sounds like you, if everybody agrees with you, if everybody sees everything the same way that you do, you have a problem.
Yeah. But also, too,
we have a problem. That's a community problem.
That's a community problem. But also fun stuff like tech. I'm a really tech person.
Yeah.
You are not tech. I got you on WhatsApp. Thank you so much for always being on WhatsApp, not iMessage. I love, look, I'm team, we all know this. I'm team.
You're my only WhatsApp
I'm
person,
team Apple, but I love WhatsApp because I talk to people all over the world.
Yeah.
And if, the whole thing with this podcast is like, think about it. We're travelers too.
Yes. We are on the road a lot.
We are on the road a lot. And we consider ourselves global citizens. Everyone uses WhatsApp.
Yeah.
And so you needed to be on WhatsApp.
I'm on it.
I know. Thank you. I'm so excited.
And sports. We will talk about sports.
Sports are huge for us.
We are both big sports people. So I think from you, I'm going to learn more about women's basketball.
I'm a huge women's basketball. Now, that is really, I watch college and WNBA. My mother was a basketball person. My mother went to college, majored in physical education and English. She played basketball literally until she passed away. And for me, women's basketball is such a highlight for me. So I follow all the college teams. I follow the WNBA players. Awesome. I'm actually going to a few games, taking my mom's sister to them because we love watching women's sports. And I'm more athletic as an adult now than I ever was in school. I'm like,
roller skater.
I'm a roller skater. I got into roller skating. Thank you, Usher. Usher. Thank you, Usher, for bringing that kind of joy to my life.
I'm so glad he's brought it back. Bringing roller skating back.
Bringing roller skating, and I'm finding that community, right? And I find actually I didn't have a hobby. I think I told you this. Like reading to me is something I do. Okay. Some people that's a hobby. Reading is not a hobby. I mean, I read every day of my life, right? And I like music. I listen to music every day of my life. But finding something where you really just have to concentrate on not falling on those skates. You have to understand your body, how is your body moving in this space. But also when you just see everybody smiling, even while we're falling. And trust me, I am wearing all the accoutrements, knee pads, wrist pads. I am not trying to break things at this age. So, but it's actually fun. So bringing things like that, and how do you find a new hobby when for me, you haven't really had a hobby. Like traveling is not a hobby. Traveling is actually who I am. So to get on a plane, which I actually hate to fly, but I love to go, that's not really a hobby. That's something I have to do. I have to talk to people. I have to see people. But being on these roller skates, and also that creating that community of just having that kind of joy.
Well, I love it. And I used to roller skate like crazy growing up.
Oh, I'm coming back. We're going to do it together.
So I'm going to get some skates.
Get some skates.
Because I was good too. I mean, my husband and I talk about, I'm like, I could go backwards.
Can you spin around?
I could do all of it.
Oh, yeah.
Now I probably would be like, remember when you think back about doing like somersaults and
I used to do
all
it.
that stuff. And now it's like, I can't even do that.
Yeah,
I hope I can roller skate.
You can roller skate. I used to roller skate in high school, spin around, do all that. I mean, now it's just learning drills on not falling and just having fun with it. But I think, as like the pod, like as we grow into these interesting people and we interview interesting people.
Yes, experts in all kinds of fascinating things.
And also realizing, I hate to say it because it's so cliche when people say age is just a number, but truly understanding now, like looking ahead. And I think about one person I love, and I'm going to speak, and she knows this, is Bobbi Brown, who started a new makeup company at 63. Yeah. And I mean, if you think about what she is doing and amazing and fascinating, and especially we're in a culture that's obsessed with youth, and some, like my career blew up in my 40s. Like it made
mine too.
Right?
Yeah.
So it's like, oh, okay. And when you think about all the list of like under this, and it's kind of like, well, we got.
How about over this?
That's what I mean. 30 over 30, 40 over 40, 50
fabulous over 50.
Yes, like
sexy over 60.
60 over 60. All these amazing people, and because I look at my social and who I follow, they're all ages. I mean, I follow Iris Apfel, and she's like 101, and then I follow like a roller skater who's 17.
Go Iris,
so,
man.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
And so I'm like, that's what I want to see. That's what, and to continue to become.
Oh, me too. Yeah, I do. You inspire me with roller skating because I used to love that so much. Gardening is my hobby. I like to put my hands in the dirt. It calms my soul and it connects me and it takes me.
I'm not a or put my hands in the dirt type of girl. I can be outside.
You can sit and sip some champagne with a fan and recline back and watch me.
Oh no! Like don't get me wrong. All the dermatologists are going to be like, I love to tan. I mean, get me out in the sun, honey, laying down. I am perfect like that.
Fully covered with a big wide brim hat. I promise. All my esthetician, dermatologist, everybody.
But that, and I get it. Like you say, it soothes your soul. Like, and so for me, like putting on a music and like I don't even like. I listen to fun music, poppy music, things that enjoy, and I just put on those skates and I just go, and I just and you don't even think about exercising because it's not one of those things that like, oh, I need to exercise. It is there, is part of who I am. So
absolutely, yeah, cool. So we'll explore some fun things, and more sports than just women's basketball. We both love Formula One.
Obsessed.
Lewis Hamilton.
Yes, obsessed with Formula One. I'm obsessed with Toto. You know this. I'm obsessed with Toto Wolff. I love it. I'm so excited. I have the calendar on my calendar. I have the F1 Academy for the women. Yeah. I'm actually learning all the drivers who are women who are part of F1 Academy right now.
Yes.
So
and Bono, don't forget about Bono. Get in there, Lewis.
Get in there, Lewis. And so a lot of like Formula One, football,
college, pros,
and I do watch soccer. I do watch soccer.
Hockey. Go Stars. Go Stars.
I think hockey is one of those sports you need to be there.
Yeah, well, you're coming, so you'll be there.
I love to go to a hockey match. I love hockey.
It's not a match, it's a game.
Sorry, hockey game. But for me, like, it's hard to watch on TV.
Yeah. No, it isn't if you're a hockey fanatic, but it is, yes, I get it.
Yeah.
But it is an easier sport to follow on TV than basketball, and it moves faster than football, so it's actually not. It's more engaged. You just have to know what's happening, and if you don't know what's happening, then
But it's really not a lot of sports that I don't really watch. But if I have the time, like I like baseball, of course. Houston Astros, always and forever.
Texas Rangers.
So, but yeah,
World Series champions.
Yeah. The thing of it is like in these like interviews, there are like in our podcast there are themes, and we're going to there, and also learning like there is like an episodes of like just us, and then there's interviews, and there's just discussions of those different topics and everything.
Women's health. We will do a lot in women's health, not only from just a general sense of women in your our 50s and what that looks like and what that's, but also looking at the disparities of women's health issues and how different communities are affected,
or in like
the very broken American healthcare
system. It's one of those things. Like I just wish sometime I could just go to Europe and just go to the doctor and come back.
Well, I've got a story about that.
And just like
for another day.
But also things that keep us interested.
Yes. Yeah. I want to, what I'm looking forward to in this podcast is learning things that I don't know, challenging things that I think I know. I don't want to do this just to regurgitate or reaffirm what I already know, like we've talked about. I want to sit in tension of conversations, even a conversation that's about, beauty and wellness but like whatever, everything can have like, well, this is my perception of this thing. Yours is different. What can I learn from you? What can I learn from, the expert, the guest that we're going to have on? What can I want to grow. I mean, we're just getting better. So I want to challenge my beliefs, my biases, my unconscious biases, my confirmation biases, all the biases. And learn and grow and be curious. And one of the things that I think we have in common that I admire about you, I don't know if I admire it because we have it in common or not. I don't know. I'll have to think about that.
Yeah.
But is we both have that. We both have this curiosity.
Yes.
We both have a thirst for knowledge, but we don't have a thirst to be right.
I don't need to be right.
Learn and grow.
I'm always like, well, why is that? Yes. I ask a lot of why. A lot of times I think sometimes people like I'm very talkative. Like I am very. Like,
I'm not talkative,
but I'm
all.
I'm an extroverted introvert.
That is very not true. What I just said.
You are very talkative. I get energy from both. I get energy from being quiet. I get energy from people. But for me, I'm always constantly learning. So sometimes it can be like I ask a bunch of questions to people, and I know people are usually like, "Why is she asking me so many questions?" I'm just naturally curious. If I'm talking to you, I want to know about you. I want to know about if you're willing to share. I know a lot of people aren't, but for me, I want to know like. not necessarily what makes you tick, but what you're excited about, right? What makes you sad. I'm looking at people as a whole person because they are, and I would like to know that about them. So I always say I never meet a stranger. Like I never meet a stranger. Yeah, but that doesn't mean like I'm, telling my personal. So,
No, you have good boundaries.
I've really, I've worked on boundaries a long time. I started working on boundaries in my 20s.
That's a masterclass.
Well, I mean, it's a constant masterclass because you don't get, it doesn't stop. I think sometimes people are like, I did this boundary. Boundaries to me are almost every day. You have to decide what boundary you're going to give people, what boundary you're going to give yourself. Like too, because it's not just about other people; it's also about yourself. Like
internal, external. Yeah,
exactly.
We should do an episode on that at some point in the future because boundaries are not walls, and so they're very confusing.
Well, I think people do think they're walls a lot of times, and they're not. And it's just, but also to think about growing up, right? People pleasing. How do you become a people pleaser, especially for women? That starts at a very early age. I think a lot of that also starts. If you're very into go to church, it's a very the word submission is always tossed around. So I think a lot of that goes into a lot of those words. And so then when you grow up, you have nobody, and then you have no boundaries. Then you meet people and you realize I do need boundaries. And then there's a conundrum of how do you do that for yourself?
Exactly. Yeah. So that's why I say it's a masterclass. It's like PhD, boundaries for life, PhD.
Well, that's everything for life, right? Everything is how do we stay curious? Yeah. How do we stay interested? How do we stay I think when I meet people, I always want to know if they're interesting. Even not about do I agree with everything about them? Are you interesting? Like, can I have another cup of coffee with you? Do I want to talk to you? Because sometimes...
Do you pass the 2 coffee cup test?
Ooh.
I never thought about that.
Yeah, because I especially being in airports and what I do working for a living, I meet a lot of people, and some people are just like,
do you talk to people in airports?
I talk to people, airports, planes. I don't get on a plane
never talk to anybody
without making a person that I'm going to help. I walk into a plane, and I got this, and I heard this from a podcaster and a writer. Her name is Lovey Ajayi. And she says, I don't walk into a room where God has not sent my helper. And every place I walk into, I always go in, thank you, God, for my helper. And not necessarily that they're helping me. I may be helping them. It could be the person who their teenage daughter, like, what book am I reading? Or they might want to know about a wine, or they might want to know about a blush. I don't know, but I'm always going to kind of meet a person.
That see, you've already talked, because I walk into a room going, I don't want to talk to anybody. I don't want to do small talk. I don't want to do put the headphones on, get on the plane, sit down. At some point, acknowledge the person.
I don't do small talk. Yeah. That's the thing. I don't. But here's the thing.
I'm too afraid to be dragged into a 6-hour conversation that I'm like.
But okay, so one, I don't like to fly. So not liking to fly, talking to people actually makes my flight bearable. And being too inward means I am creating scenarios on this plane in my mind, and that's not good for anyone sitting next to me.
Okay.
So I rather, even if they don't want to talk, I actually tell them when I sit down, I don't like to fly. I might have to hold your hand. I am very nervous fly. And usually people okay, because I'm coming at them and they really understand she has a fear of flying.
Well, you're giving them you're giving them an opportunity of empathy. You're giving them an opportunity of service if they want. And it's because I think you're being vulnerable in that moment.
Yeah, I have to be vulnerable every single flight I get because I'm going to grab someone's hand. Pretty much so.
I think that's fantastic that you're, and flying is not a thing for me. But if I'm driving over an overpass or a bridge or something, I'm going to be having an anxiety attack.
Okay.
And I will tell people about that. So,
so for me, it's more of and usually people, I could tell the person that put on their headphones and they don't want to talk, but they can understand. And right, but they have reached their hands to me. They have put their hand to calm me down, even though they are watching their movie. We're not even having conversation because that little thing just kind of helps me.
I would be with my headphones on with my book, or if I'm listening to my headphones are me either listening to a podcast or a book. I would have a book, or I'd be watching a movie or something. But I am also keenly aware of everything that's going on around me at all times in a way that's exhausting. Yes, I am in therapy and have been for 20 years. And so I would know I would be able to feel your body language
Yeah.
and feel and if you became distressed, you would find that I would not, I would like,
But that's what people do.
Yeah.
They don't
Yeah.
necessarily, everybody
because
doesn't
we're
want-
in community on a plane.
You're in community on a
Yes.
plane. Yeah. So it all goes
Yeah.
back to community and curiosity.
Yeah, absolutely. And so what do you hope to get out of this podcast for yourself?
Well, I have a lot of information in my head that I'm always been that learner who wants to know information for myself. So I get a lot of people always asking me questions about things. And now I can say, we did an episode on that. You can go to episode, number whatever, and they can see like, hey, she's talking about this, because it's one of those things too. If I don't know, I know someone who knows someone who knows someone about something. And so for me, the podcast is basically like the download out of my head of all the things that I've been wanting to ask people, wanting to learn from them, and want to share with people.
That's fantastic. Yeah, because I tell people who tell people who tell people, ask Julia.
And that way I can get it all out. Right now it's like, oh, it's just so much. Like my husband makes a joke sometimes. I'm like, oh, my head hurts. Like it's not like a headache. It's just like an ache. He's like, because all that information in your head needs to just come out.
Oh,
so
my gosh.
now
Our husbands need to meet.
They need to meet. Dennis and Donald, they need to meet.
They have a brotherhood that they don't know that they have
yet. And so now all that information is going to be downloaded into the podcast. Also, like levity, right? It's not all like, anxiety-induced podcast. It's also a lot of fun, a lot of laughs, a lot of like, things that I'm seeing, I'm doing, and, we're watching. As much information as we are, sometimes people are like, it's information overload. I just feel you have to schedule the information and kind of like what works for you and what you take in and what you retain. Like I'm very good. I think because I'm been reading for so long, I'm very good at retaining information. And so when people ask me, it kind of like comes out. But now having a podcast also with someone else who retains a lot of information, it's like, oh, you want to go on that tangent? Oh, honey, let's go. Let's go. We're going to put it in audio for you.
I do tend to research things a lot, but yeah.
I research enough.
I research for writing for wine publications. I over-research. This is the two things I do. I over-research everything I write about, and I tend to fall in love with every story I write. Not my work, but the whatever it is.
But that's journalist
the topic.
That's journalist stuff, right?
Yeah.
And that's also the person who is really studying to get this doctorate.
Yeah.
That's all there too, right? And so, but I want to be able to say, you know what? I go in with enough information, because if I go in with so much information, I don't want to be like, well, what am I getting from the guests if I know every single thing?
No, yeah, you're right.
Right.
Yeah.
I want to learn from them and
Yes.
learn something new. So I think learning and getting information is good, but you got to know when to okay, I'm going to stop it at about 70%, maybe, and then let the other 30 come from them.
Yeah, I think a little bit, I agree with what you're saying. A little bit different for me is I feel like I can ask more interesting questions if I know more, not just kind of the same questions. But also, there's a bit of, I will confess, there's a bit of the intellect and the research that calms my anxiety. If I can be intellectual about it, then I don't have to be vulnerable about it. Now, I'm not saying that's right, but I'm saying that's my protection.
Okay.
So I've got all the knowledge. So then
Gotcha.
I don't have to break down the walls of vulnerability. And I know that this podcast will stretch that for me. And at times there'll be a sledgehammer breaking down that wall. But then also, it just kind of helps me. If I feel prepared, then I can let it go off and I can wing it, and it's okay because I've prepared myself to be unprepared.
You prepared yourself to be unprepared.
Yeah.
I've never heard that, but okay.
Well, I mean, it's like because I've done the research, so
Yeah.
I understand. I have a rough understanding of the topics. So then whatever the conversation goes, then I can be like, oh, okay, all right.
Yeah.
Now we're going there and not going here, but it's okay. So it just helps me, a little bit of my anxiety, a little bit of my stress, a little bit of my,
But that's what makes it beautiful, though.
Yeah.
That's what makes everybody so it's individualistic, right? It's the way we learn, the way we compartmentalize information, the way we take it in, right? So for me, like, I'm one of those things, like when I read books, right? Is very interesting. Like to hold my attention for like a nonfiction book, I really have to be almost in love with the author because otherwise, like, I don't connect in the same way if I'm reading as if I had it in audio. If I'm not, it's a weird kind of like a weird Julia thing about the way I retain. Like, some books are, for me, are listening books and some books are reading books.
Oh, absolutely.
Right? And so I'm always like, okay, if I'm reading this, if I'm listening to this, I'm always like, what? And usually I'll know within like the first chapter of the book, like maybe this is better if I listen to it.
I start a lot listening, and then I, if I love it, then I buy it, and then yeah. So what do you want what do you hope that our guests, not our guests, what do you hope that our audience gets out of the podcast?
I want the audience to feel like this is a cozy hug.
Oh,
like it's a cozy hug, like two girlfriends just chatting and giving you information that you just like, it make you go, didn't think about that. Just giving you something to think about in a positive way.
Wow. Well, see, there's all my notes. Cozy hug. Didn't write that.
No, you didn't write that. But think about it, right? Cozy hug. Like you look forward to the podcast and you're like, okay, I know I'm going to get some information. I'm going to get some laughs. I'm going to learn something, but I'm going to feel like they get me. Like I am part of their community.
Oh, that would be awesome. Yeah. I do. I hope that they learn and grow with us.
Yeah.
And I hope that they have fun with us because we will have fun.
Oh, we're going to have fun.
And it's not a wine podcast, but there may be wine.
Of course. Like they're going to be, I mean, look, sparkling wine, bubbles bring the party.
Yes.
Like,
Bubbles bring the party. I want a ssweatshirt. Bubbles bring the party. Just Getting Better podcast.
Exactly.
Merch alert. Merch alert.
Always.
Okay, all right. Well,
high five, girl.
High five to you. Yes. This is going to be fun. Thanks for listening to Just Getting Better with your hosts, Michelle Williams
and Julia Coney.
We hope you enjoyed our deep dive into some important topics impacting women today. To ensure you never miss an episode, click follow or subscribe.
Head over to isjustgettingbetter.com to sign up for our email list, as well as check out all the links and resources in the show notes. And be sure to follow us on social media. If you love the show, will you please help us build our community by sharing it with friends? Until next time,
keep just getting better.